We are live. Hello and welcome back, everyone, to another Sales Hacker webinar. If this is your first time joining a Sales Hacker webinar, extra special thank you to you. If you're a long-time Sales Hacker member, what's up? It feels nice to be back. I haven't actually hosted one of these in a little while. This is going to be a fun one. A cool topic. What we're talking about today is President's Club and your sales incentive strategies. I'm going to talk about some ones that are perfect for 2021. Of course, we just had probably the weirdest year of my life, and we're all gearing up to hopefully get back to some semblance of normalcy, maybe not. But that's what we're going to be wrestling with today. I have a perfect panel to talk about this. But before I do introduce my guests, super quick housekeeping. So number one, these are all recorded. So if you got to jump off, you got to do a one-on-one, you got to go close a deal, whatever it is. I know there's a whole new slew of things that we deal with in this work from home reality that we're in. So if you have to jump off, it's okay. We will have this in your inbox within about 24 hours. And then second thing, so we have like discussion points we want to go through, but it's always much more enjoyable when we're doing this kind of roundtable style panel, when we know who we're hanging out with, who we're rocking with. So there is a chat section at the bottom. Introduce yourself, your name, title, what company you're with, say hello. It's always cool to see who's hanging with us. And then we also want to hear from you. So we do these for the community. So if you have specific questions around sales incentives, around how to plan President's Club, whatever it may be, please use the Q&A feature. I'll be manning that kind of as the voice of the community. I'll try and get to all the relevant questions as we go. And then if there's some that are a little outside of the scope of what we're talking about, we'll have a little Q&A session at the end. But that's it. That's the boring stuff out of the way. Without further ado, I want to introduce my great panel. Starting with David, we are joined by David Stevens. David, welcome to the community.
Hi. What's interesting is I've heard about this podcast from my sales team. So, I'm excited to be here, and I hope they all are going to give me feedback afterwards. I don't think I'll have to convince them.
I love it. We love hearing that salespeople are listening to the Sales Hacker podcast, joining the webinars. We love it. So David is the director of global events and field marketing. So I always ask this question. What's the superhero origin story of David? How did you get to where you're at in your career?
So I basically grew up as a salesperson. What that means is I grew up raised as a Jehovah's Witness. And my first segue into the professional world was doing sales. I would close my sales interviews with they'd ask the question, how do you handle rejection? And I'd say, have you ever knocked on someone's door at 8 a.m. on a Saturday to talk to them about God? And that was usually the end of the interview in a good way. So I started in sales. I worked some trade shows, and it got me hooked on events. And so I ended up, I consider marketing and events basically sales, just without the hard quotas, because we're supposed to drive pipeline and build business. So we may not have necessarily a bonus structure and things of that nature in the traditional sense, but we still have numbers, and we still have MQL numbers we got to hit and things of that nature. So we are closely aligned. But that being said, I grew up basically as a salesperson, and then I was in enterprise sales for a while, and then I made the leap into events, and I quit a senior AE role for a telecom company in 2002, and I went to work for a radio station making minimum wage so I could go be a part of events. And I worked in radio for a while, and then crossed over into association, and then went from association to corporate. So that's my origin story. did we lose Scott?
I think we did.
No worries. Hey everyone. Yes, I agree with Daryl. Scott seems to be stuck in a time vortex, but we'll just keep on going.
I can imagine that.
Now he's back.
I can imagine knocking on by Hillary, who's the HR director. River. Hillary, well.
Hello. My story's not quite so varied and fun. It's more, I actually had an accounting degree and started off in the accounting field. And then I followed a boss and she thought I'd be good in HR. And I moved from nonprofit to for-profit company and never looked back from there. I've been in HR for a long time now, we'll just say.
Sorry, I just got kicked out of the Zoom. But thank you for sharing your background, Hillary. Quick follow-up question. What is something that has kept you sane during COVID?
Great question. Well, I call it my rent-a-dog. I don't own a dog. It's too much for us personally because we're often gone from the house, but I am dog sitting for a friend of mine and I call him my rent-a-dog. So you may hear him in the background and he keeps me sane during COVID because he gets me out and keeps me laughing. So, yeah.
I love that. That's like the best part of having a dog. You get to like hang out with it when you want. You get to be like cool auntie, but don't have to have it all the time. I like it. And next up, last but not least, joined by Graham Miller, who's the Global Head of Sales Engagement at Qualtrics. Graham, welcome, man.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Do you want me to do a little hero story as well, or just keep going?
Let's hear the superhero story.
Yeah, nothing wild by any means, right? I was a political science major going pre-law and had some change of events in my life and found myself in analytics and business development and really enjoyed it. And through a series of weird events, like I think everyone can attribute some career changes to in their lives, found that I love working with people and getting them to enjoy their work through some meaningful tools, which has really kind of brought me to the moment that I'm in currently doing this at Qualtrics. And I just love every second of it. So that's where we're at.
That's awesome. And Qualtrics, such an incredible growth story over the last few years. Must have been cool to see that trajectory of such hyper growth. All right. I like it. We've got the right people here to kind of wrestle with this topic. Quick shout out to some people joining us. We've got Daryl from Canada. What's up? We have Camille, Marketing Events Manager from Madison. We have John Glass, an AE from Grand Rapids. Ray Ramirez, Danielle from Chicago. Angie, I love it. Karen, Jane, Elizabeth, Bernard. List goes on and on. Welcome, everyone. Excited to have you. Thanks for hanging out with us. We don't take it lightly that you're going to spend the next 50 or so minutes with us. All right, let's kick this off with some quick polls. I want to get a gauge on like where everyone's at with this topic. And the first one I want to do is: are you planning to go back to an in-person President's Club group in 2021? Curious to see the results here. Hillary, what do you think the results are going to be?
I'm going to guess most people are not quite ready for that. I think that we'll stay back a little bit and possibly do some individual trips on their own still. Things like we actually have done with Blue Board in the past year.
Cool. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm thinking it's the same. Let's see. We'll stop that in 3, 2, 1. Stop. All right. So we have a lot of people still deciding. I think that makes sense. So we have 16% said yes, 33% said no, 51%. I think like a lot of the world is just like don't know what's going on. The future seems a little blurry still. So we've got everyone undecided. That's super, super interesting. All right, let's do one more poll. So I want to talk about what types of incentives are you offering for sales incentives and spiffs, since we're like undecided on what we're doing with all these things. How are we, what are we actually doing? So let me see here. Launch the second one. David, what incentives and spiffs have you been using for the team?
Well, I don't because I sit on the marketing side, I can't speak to what our sales team is doing, but I will note that we've been using a tool called Snappy, and we've recently introduced an ability for people to acknowledge other peers across the organization, and it's basically a gifting platform where it's not designed to be experiences. It's not designed to be high dollar per se, but like you can send a coworker, a few options of like really nice mugs or a plant or things of that nature, just for them helping you out in a pinch. In way of our incentive trip, we're in the still deciding camp. And last year we did ours completely online. So with some custom flexibility for people to choose. But yeah, it's in way of incentives and spiffs, I think April 2021 is pretty much just as rough as April 2020 in the sense of what the heck is going to happen 6 months from now. I don't know.
I'm with you. It certainly feels that way. All right, we'll end this poll in 3, 2, 1. Cash. We got a lot of cold hard cash coming in. I like that. As a former rep, I used to love getting cash. We've got gift cards, days off. I like that one. That one's pretty popular. 24%. Heavy on the experiences as well. That is huge. Time off, time with leadership, just 3%. Swag, 18%. So that's interesting. I guess that kind of goes in line with like people don't know what to do, so cash is like kind of always there. So that is super interesting. Thank you, everyone. That is helpful to see where we're going. But let's kick this off. So first off, want to thank Blueboard, of course, for sponsoring this discussion. If you haven't checked out Blueboard and you're in this arena of sales incentives, you're missing out. Go make sure that you do. But first question, and Graham, I'll go with you on this one to start with. So we've been working remotely, or at least in a hybrid setting, for over a year now, which is crazy. What's changed in regards to your sales culture at Qualtrics? And talk me through about motivation levels on your sales team. Like, David just kind of broke down how it's like, how are we still here? It feels the same as it did almost a year ago. Walk me through it.
Yeah. And let me preface, as I should with everything, right? Being remote in and of itself makes it a little bit more challenging to really get a pure idea of what that looks like. Now, however, thanks to the business of Qualtrics and being experience management, we are pretty honed in on our reps. And so I think there initially was an overwhelming sense of like, this is temporary, right? Like nobody knew what was going on. And so we all thought we would kind of be back in office late summer, early fall at the latest. And man, that was awful. Glad we're done with that, right? And then reality started sinking in as we realized what a big deal this was. And so our teams adapted incredibly quickly to the notion of get used to it, get comfortable, build your new habits. That came with its own set of challenges and difficulties. And when you're talking about morale, there's sales engagement, incentive, fun morale, and then there's I'm doing my day-to-day job morale. And I think those two are separate in this conversation, right? I don't speak too much to how their day-to-day goes, but I think it's pros and cons like everything in life. You're not around your teammates. You're not playing ping pong. You're not having lunch. You're not doing the things that were habitual before. But for some reps, you're with your family. You're enjoying time spent that you couldn't have done before. And there's a renewed sense of joy and motivation found in that. And so as we adapted as people in general, I think we just became resilient and I'm happy to say Qualtrics is, firing on all cylinders on that end. And so it's probably unique to each group, but there definitely was a need for direct program changes and incentive changes to match it.
I think we might have lost Scott again.
And I don't know if we lost Scott. I'm happy to jump in though, just to talk about kind of some of the things that we've seen change. I love what you said, Graham. We've kind of noticed that people were used to doing their sales a certain way. So they would go out and they would visit people. That's most of our salespeople are extroverts. And so when they would no longer be able to go out and see people, we found a slog with them being able to get online, do things in a different way. And so we've been working through that a lot this year is what I've found. And we actually switched things. So, and can you hear me okay? My computer's a little fuzzy. Okay. So we switched things up a bit to make sure that everybody had training up front on all of those tools. And kind of that's how we saw things move to people being able to utilize the tools. And even though it was difficult, they are knowledgeable about them now and getting more comfortable. So I think that's one of the things that we mentioned. It looks like Scott's back.
I think so. Yeah. I just can you hear me? Okay. I just switched. I've got like two different networks. Hopefully this one should be better. This is odd. Apologize for that. Are we good now? Yes, we're good. Okay, cool. Thank you for your patience, everyone. All right. So David, would love to hear your weigh in on this as well. What's changed with regards to your sales culture? How do you keep the team motivated when maybe there's not necessarily an end in sight?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been great is seeing our executive team across the board step up and really make efforts to engage. Little friendly banter a week and a half out from end of quarter, our CRO will jump on Slack and say, after the first deal comes in, that usually is the beginning, is who's going to be next, and just kind of friendly, fun things like that. I don't know that there is anything done specifically to target the sales culture versus the culture as a whole, because we have a strong belief that it takes the whole company to sell. They can't sell if it's a garbage product. If we can't answer customers' questions, and if something happens and we can't get it fixed, they're going to leave, et cetera, et cetera. So we have that mindset. So we really tried to address just the culture as a whole and up our game with our all hands and create more fun when we do have company-wide events, playing music and using quizzes, and just really trying to up level the engagement, giving out little gifts for themes on all hands. We did a Star Wars themed all hands that was on May 4th because why not? And everyone dressed up, and like people wore things that you didn't expect to see on camera. So we tried to tie in all those activities that got people engaged and tried to bring that online so that people still felt like they were connecting with people, and it wasn't just this, oh, let me log on to the all hands on my phone and I'll just set it down and I'll keep working and not pay attention. We try to keep people on their toes so that they felt like they were actually engaging with their peers.
I like that. The little things will definitely go a long way, shaking things up, doing things that are novel. I like it. All right, I want to quickly go to a question that came in, and Karen, great question. I might need some clarification on it. So, question is, I'd love to hear if anyone is using their President's Club as an advisory committee or has ideas on how to make that feel like a privilege and not more work. So if I'm hearing this correctly, and Karen, feel free to jump in and clarify. But I'm hearing that like when you do these President's Clubs, being able to get some feedback from your frontline reps at that time, is that something throughout the year?
So I happen to know Karen, so I might be able to probe a little bit on this one. Hi, Karen. Thank you for coming. Yeah, do you mean? I'm guessing you probably mean like if the trip isn't planned yet, or you don't have a plan yet, are you surveying them and figuring out what kind of comfort levels there are, what they would be interested in doing, what feels like the most rewarding option to the individuals? I'm guessing that might be, as opposed to like constantly asking them questions. And for those of you in the President's Club, looking to have them give input on sales program throughout the year.
Right. So have them kind of build their own program. Dave, great job. You should be moderating this. So not just President's Club, but have them give insight into the President's Club that you're going to build. Would love to hear, Hillary, your take on that. How did you gather feedback, gather people's level of comfortability leading up to this?
It was great to have, horrible thing to say, but it was great to have COVID hit in the timeline it did for us, just because we had just announced our President's Club for the prior year. And the way we had previously done it is everybody booked their own trips. And we were finding some people just hadn't booked their trips. And I was like, okay, what are you doing here? Do we, have you booked this or not? And I got feedback from a lot of people who said, no, I haven't booked it. I'm just not comfortable. I don't want to do it yet. So we were lucky in that regard. And we actually were able to we made the switch to Blue Board at that point. And for us, what Blue Board did is prior, everybody was out booking their own trips. So they'd go out, find their own flights, find their own information. And we moved them to Blue Board because it's more of a concierge. We set them up, like we had this big kickoff meeting, and everybody found out more about what their steps were, which was really tell me where you want to go, and we'll work to get you there. And they then could each pick individual trips to go wherever they want. But if they didn't want to spend it, they still have it. They're just holding on to it till a better point in time, which is really cool. That's kind of how we managed that portion.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great answer. So switching gears a little bit, Graham, I want to go back to you on this one. Let's talk about adapting, and how have you adapted your strategies to ensure reps are staying focused, they're staying motivated to reach their goals and targets?
Yeah, gosh, if I could sell that perfectly, right? be a billionaire. So at the end of the day, the best way to really gather that information you need to make those educated and data-driven solutions is understanding what your reps are feeling, how they're doing, A to Z on that front. Revenue operations, strategy and operations, whatever that department is that's helping support the sales org, marketing, HR. When able to take that data-driven solution and understand, hey, reps are feeling Zoom fatigue. Hey, reps are struggling not being able to do in-person demos, etc. Gaining an understanding of that, I think, really lies within the sales leadership role, and so they do a phenomenal job at that. When it comes to helping them stay focused on incentive targets or spiffs that we're running, the goal that I've kind of chased is just over communication. And I should state I'm not perfect at it. I just strive towards it. So, I've created a visible website that our Salesforce uses, where you can go and you can find out the exact details. You can see who's in the lead. You can see the clarifying rules, the prizes you're after, who were the winners in the last quarter. It's really become a hub of information for all of these things. And then I just drive to it as often and in every situation I can. Slack, GChat, email, team meetings, all hands meetings. I become very selfish with my time when I have it. And I really say, hey, like, oh, so-and-so, you're close. You need to bump it up here. Ironically, we've scaled up the number we do every quarter. And so I'm starting to feel the stress of trying to over communicate to a lot of groups. But I think just hyper visibility, over communication, and And although maybe it's a funny thing and a secret sauce, but just be fun and happy about it. Make sure it's a positive thing. People respond to positivity generally in the same way.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So you actually have a landing page that I could go to as like a Qualtrics rep and see exactly where I stand and everything, and whether I'm eligible for experiences and things like that.
Yeah. So depending on what sales tier you are and what region of our sales force you find yourself, you can see our annual programs, our quarterly programs, our rep specific programs, our team specific programs. We got a lot going on, so it's necessary to keep track.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. I like that. And then quickly on the how to over communicate. Do you have any particular channel that works better for you? Like, are you doing maybe a newsletter to the reps? Do you find bugging people on Slack is the best? What do you find your reps are most receptive to? Because that can be difficult when we're trying to communicate so many different things sometimes.
Yeah. So first thing I did was just take a look at what I get tired of, which is too many emails. So I reduced the number of emails I send exponentially. I do one a week. It's just standing updates. Where I really see the most engagement is in my Slack channels with my sales leaders, where I can help provide updates of placements of their reps so that they can give praise, they can help push communication or competitiveness. Those more snappy things. When I get a text, I'm kind of like, I just look at it. I don't even mean to. It's a habitual thing. And so if something naturally has my attention, the little woodpecker noise on Slack has my attention, and I look at it, even if I'm really in the middle of something that's more important. And so I kind of take that channel as well myself. Things with instant gratification work. So Slack, GChat, whatever you find best for you.
I like that. I'm going to double click one more time because there's a lot of gold in here. Of those, you mentioned some Slack channels. Are those who's in those Slack channels? What are they called? All of that is helpful as people are planning.
So I look at, here are my frontline leaders in Department A, and they target public sector or technology or whatever, right? I gather that group wherein I'm doing an incentive, and I take all those leaders and I create a Slack channel, North America's technology group, and then I send out their updates to them. But then I have to break this down for the Americas, for Latin America, EMEA, APJ, Enterprise, AE, SDR, etc. So there's quite a lot at the end of the day. There's about 30 channels.
Cool. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Hillary, I will go with you. Same question. How have you adapted your strategies to ensure reps stay focused and motivated to reach their goals and targets? And specifically, you look at not just reps, but the entire organization. So you have an interesting lens on this.
Yeah, we really switched to a lot of online things. So basically our intranet was much more heavily used this year. We put out our stats for the entirety of the sales team at year end. We do some big competitions. So those were visible for everybody and everybody could comment on them now, whereas that wasn't the case before. So, and there's definitely always some congenial poking at each other going on. So that was nice for everybody to kind of see and keep things driving. So that was one of the things that kind of changed for us. Another thing that we took a look at, it's interesting because we had marketing materials, but you couldn't always find them. So sometimes it was more difficult to get your hands on these things, and COVID pushed us so sales reps were able to easily grab all of the marketing slicks that we have out there. Everything got organized on our pages within our intranet site, and those resources were more readily available. So that was helpful in that regard. But another thing that we kind of did to keep people driving along is we announced people's wins. We put those up on our main page. So when people logged in, you could see the wins, you could celebrate them together and keep people going in that manner, which was really cool.
I like that. Yeah, celebrating people publicly is awesome. And Heather, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Do you have headphones at all by any chance?
I do. I haven't been able
It's not too bad.
to Zoom, but I'll give it a try while I'm on pause.
Yeah, give it a shot. So, and also quickly going to Karen, thank you for clarifying the question. I think it is a fantastic idea. And David, maybe we'll clarify this. How would you? So the clarification is she wants to extract information from the President's Club team because they're all top performers on how give feedback on how the sales organization is doing and how it should be ran, which I think is a fantastic idea. But you do walk this line of, hey, I thought this was a trip celebrating me. Why is this starting to feel like work? How would you balance that?
That would be really tough for me. I'd have to think very theoretically, because our incentive trip, our President's Club, is not salespeople only. Our entire company is eligible for attendance or involvement. We have this process we do every year right before our kickoff that is the value awards, and we have 4 key company values. And we ask everyone in the company to go out and nominate anyone in the company that is displayed those values. And then a number of those people are selected and announced along with the top performer salespeople, all announced together in one award ceremony. And everybody gets the same award. Everybody gets the same trip. In the sense that now last year was obviously a little different and things were highly customized based on people's comfort levels. But the idea being is that it's an all-inclusive program, and President's Club is designed that, we have people on our engineering team in India that won this year. So I think if you have a smaller group of people, it might be possible. But I just I don't even know where I'd begin with something like that. I think it's a great idea, but I think it's a monumental task, and I'm not surprised Karen, as awesome as she is, that she's going that direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a good idea. Tough to pull off. Graham, back to you. Switching up the question a little bit. Going back to incentives. How are you seeing incentives changing at Qualtrics? And what are you finding matters most to your reps right now?
It's a great question. Flexibility. People as a whole have had to adapt and change and be flexible themselves. And the least any company can do for their employees is share that same empathy of flexibility. And so if we are running a particular incentive that didn't strike a chord with some of the prize choices or whatever have you, or we get to that point and something changes for a rep, it's not uncommon that they reach out and they say, hey, can I do something different? Is that okay? Almost sort of, some are less sheepish than other about it, I will say, but overall there's kindness at that question. And I mean, the answer should always be yes, 100% always. It doesn't take away from the value of what the incentive was to show flexibility to your employees. I think we've all been in positions ourselves where we wish we would have received more of it, or on our behalf. And so I think it's our duty to kind of share that moving forward. And so with incentives, focus more on the principles of what you're driving, the performance, the metrics you're going for, and be gracious in everything else, and meet the rep halfway. The last thing that you want is to have a rep feel like you hold this iron gauntlet of incentives and this is the way it is, too bad, move forward. You need to engage with them. You need to. They're your customers at the end of the day. And any company that would do that to their customers would fall by the wayside very quickly. So treat your sales reps or whoever your audience is as your customer, and be customer obsessed.
I love that. I like that. Can you give me some examples of flexibility that you've been able to give to your reps?
Sure. A good example of this recently was we recently hosted an event, our Work Different event at Qualtrics, and naturally, we want as many people to come enjoy and register for that event as possible. So we held some registration incentives, and of those prizes, we gave options of some choices of tangible items, right? Traeger grills, Dyson vacuums, things that we love, as well as, you know, $1,000 Blue Board experience, $500 Blue Board experience, $450, and just having that flexibility alone of knowing that I can go do whatever I want really as an experience is very calming to a program manager of anything, because they know that they don't have to go do 100 times more effort to go and themselves cater that experience. They can just let it be right at the door, and Blueboard will take care of it. And I wish I had the data for you. Everyone's choosing right now, or else I'd say, and out of 50 people, here's how it went. But I can't. I already know that people are choosing some items, and people are choosing experiences, and more and more, as an experience-oriented company, we see people following suit, because you want to get out. We all want to get out right now, or we want to spend specific special time with people that we love doing something that we wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah, I love that. Great answer. I know personally, I stopped giving like gifts that were things like probably 3 years ago, and pretty much all my gifts that I give to people in my personal life experience that we can get together, I just find they're so much more lasting, you know, those memories, than just a tangible thing. So I like it. I love the flexibility piece. I think we're seeing the same thing at Outreach and Sales Hacker as well, as people want that flexibility now more than ever. Hillary, I want to go to you with this next question and go a little more specific down the route of President's Club. And how are your plans for President's Club changing? What new programs did you maybe try this year? And perhaps any learnings that came along the way?
Yeah, so I think, well, I talked a little bit about how we went to the Concierge experience with our trip, and being able to have people use those trips whenever they wanted. So they can, you know, if they want to keep those till 2025, they can. And I want to make sure, is that what you're referring to, or are there?
Yeah, can you maybe break down what Concierge? What does that mean?
Yeah, okay, I can do that. All right, so basically, when we had that initial meeting where everybody met with Blueboard, and they met their concierge in person or face-to-face virtually. So they had the opportunity to know who that individual was, and they then can discuss over email or via the phone what they're looking for. Where do they want to go? What do they want to do? And the concierge then goes back, makes a trip, builds a trip out, gives them an itinerary based on the information that they've shared. That itinerary gives them a day by day of what it is they're going to do, where they're going to go. Has nice pictures of where they're headed, and then they're able to review that, make sure that it's what they want, is it the price point that they want to spend, if they wanted to spend additional. And then they can go back and have any further conversations if they need to, or the concierge goes and books everything. There's nothing that the salesperson has to do, which is great. So they book the flights, they book the hotels, they book the experiences that they're doing while they're there as well. And I apologize if you're still getting the feedback. I did try to set up my my earphones, but they're not really working.
No problem. We can still hear you. That's awesome though. So I imagine that led to a feeling of comfortability within everyone. They've got that white glove service. They know what they're getting into. They can customize it themselves. They don't have to worry about being in a large group. I like it. Graham, question for you. So with that, it seems like that's where we're moving, right? Is these highly customized concierge, white glove, pick your own adventure kind of experiences. But there is this other element, and maybe this is what SKOs turn into. But there's this feeling of like camaraderie that is formed when people are on President's Club. How do you match those two realities, and what are you doing still to foster that camaraderie when maybe everyone's doing their own unique President's Club this year?
Yeah, I think it's a challenging question by any means, because I think the standard quota for how this has worked in the past has remained pretty much the same until last year. As far as I can remember, at least working, it hasn't. And I have a younger career, frankly, but I these physical events where you'd meet and you'd collaborate, and that's just how it has been. And in the same vein, same with working in office. And we've been forced to just take an honest, realistic look at working from home. Is this going to work? Can we still perform? Can we have meaningful interactions with other people from home? Can we reward people meaningfully from home? And so I think, to give a mixed answer here, you're going to have combinations of things happening every year, where you're going to have some in-person and non-in-person type things. They're going to be based off of incentives. They're going to be based off of recognition programs. So while we might hold a physical President's Club again one year, SKO might also remain completely virtual from this point forward. And at Qualtrics, we reward our top 40 some odd sales partners and sales reps with these rewards that are experiences, where we say, hey, here's a $1,000 Blue Board award. Go spend time with your family because you spent time with us, making us successful. You go be successful with your family. And so I think the more a company can do to be focused on us as individuals and as people with real lives, and recognizing at the core of what we do is for the people we love, for ourselves, for making all of this around us a reality, the more a company can contribute to that and benefit an employee in their life with quality experiences away from home, I think they just benefit, and you create a healthy culture. I apologize if that doesn't come entirely specific to your question. I just think it's a general answer because things are still evolving and changing.
No, I think it's a great answer. And I think part of that is, I think just like company culture in general is changing. It's kind of less about almost like drinking the company Kool-Aid, if you will, and everything's like rah, rah, rah. And now it's more about looking at the holistic human being that's part of this company, and that is part of their identity. They also have families. They also have their own likes, their own wants. And I think this new path is kind of facilitating that. You mentioned something there, though, in office. Let's talk about this for a second. David, I'll start with you. Imagine yourself, Q3, maybe Q4. Do you think you're heading back to the office? And if so, how are you planning ahead to make your sales team feel effective and productive in that transition, whether it's in person or a hybrid?
Well, I think salespeople who are in the office aren't effective. They should be out selling. But I think I'm here in California. Our offices are in Redwood City. So there is talks about people going back to the office. I think a hard truth that people need to be comfortable with is when offices reopen back up, productivity is going to dive in the wrong. It's going to go way down because people are going to be so excited to be in the office and see people and talk and give each other hugs and like, oh my God, I haven't seen you in forever, and chitter chatter and whatnot. Like, I think, quite honestly, the first few days of our offices being open we should just consider days off, because nobody's going to get anything done. Just because people are excited to see each other. They're human interaction, right? Like, they might go sit at their desk and then they're going to start talking to the person next to them, and then like it's going to be an interesting thing. But and then it will feel new again, and then the newness will wear off. And I live about 60 miles from my office, and I think the way a lot of people are probably going to end up settling in is somewhere in the middle. They're going to do a 3-2 split where they're at home 3 days a week, or and in the office 2, or vice versa. There's a lot of surveys going around right now about hoteling desks, where it's almost like it's a WeWork type situation where you use your desk, you get your desk on these days versus those days, and someone else is able to use it on other days. And but I think there's going to be, I put in the chat, here comes the H word, because that's where we're going. It's all, everything's going to be a mixture and hybrid. That's the H word, just for what it's worth. I think all of these things people are going to be excited to see people and get back together. I think, there's last year's incentive trip for us. I surveyed people personally, and because I didn't want to send out a survey and get these kind of, I don't want to say generic answers, but when people fill out a survey, they know there could be a panel of people reading them. And I wanted to get people's real feelings and emotions. And I talked to one person who they're like, you couldn't pay me to get on a plane. I talked to another person who said, get me out of here. And when you're dealing with people with different comfort levels, you have to be able to, especially when it comes to incentives, what's the point of an incentive? It's right there in the word, to incent them. So whatever you do has to be special to them and to motivate them. So I think if anyone thinks that we can go back to the way things were in any way, in any part of work, be it office, events, whatever, incentive trips, etc., the game's changed, and it's forever changed. And we now have to be more cognizant of ever that different things matter to different people. And the way we're going to retain people and the way we're going to keep those great people is by giving people options to work the way they want to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, spot on. I couldn't agree with that more. There's no going back. This is a new world we live in, and I had one of the world's leading disaster avoidance experts articulate it in such a good way. He was like, the COVID is like, a lot of people are treating it like your city flooded and it's underwater, and everyone is preparing for the water to leave. But that's not what's going to happen. The people that are going to be successful in the post-COVID era have realized that we now live in a city that's underwater, and you need to be building the scuba equipment and all that sort of stuff. And those are the people that are going to thrive, not the ones who are preparing for the water to go away. And I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at it. Hillary, I want to get I imagine this must be, if not keeping you up at some nights, certainly one of the things on your agenda constantly is thinking about, this transition back. How are you looking at the transition back and keeping people motivated and excited?
So it's funny. David was saying that he doesn't, people are out and they are going to continue to be out if they're doing a good job selling. And I'm interested to see if that will change at all. I don't know if people will be out on the road as much as they were selling. And so part of the conversation that we've been having is our sales managers are supposed to be incentivized based on the performance, the amount of overhead that they spend, what does their P&L look like at the end of the day. And should we get our salespeople involved in some of that? They are going to be affecting the bottom line of the P&L, in addition to commission. Do we bonus them on that? Because I don't know if it'll look the same as it did before. I think, for a long time, people will be maybe avoiding travel, but we'll see what happens there.
That is a super interesting kind of light bulb moment that I just had from what you said. That would be an interesting world if we have, your enterprise reps that traditionally would go and spend money on fancy dinners and go to conferences and do all this stuff. Maybe there is an incentive for if you can keep your costs down and you can do what we've been proven that we can do in the COVID era anyway, in a post-COVID world. That would be really interesting, and perhaps someone will adopt that. There was a great question that came in from Camille. Camille asked, do you have a tenure/employment length of requirement for any incentive? I think this is a great question. Graham, you answered it a little bit via text, but would love for you to elaborate on your thoughts on this, because this is an interesting question, because if someone just started, they might be bummed out that, I just started, but I've been crushing it for 2 months. Why can't I go? Or why can't I get this?
Yeah, so totally depends on your sales work, your process, your pipeline, the whole deal, right? But generally speaking, it's much less of a question about like, can they win something versus are we making equitable groups competing on fair playing grounds? So I'm not going to take an enterprise rep with a 1.5 mil quota and put them against a ramping enterprise rep with a 50K quota. Because if I were to do quota attainment right and they pull in 150K deal right, they're gonna have a huge percentage increase over that rep who is ironically adding more value by doing 80% of their number, right? So I'll divide these by tenure on the year levels. So we have a tenured group or an untenured group. Unless you can find equitable things like fully ramped quotas or fully ramped pipe gen quotas, like you just sort of make that work within it, because you don't want to be a small fish in a big pond. And you also don't want to be a big fish in a small pond, because generally you're going to have a crappy prize you're going to win. And so just finding the right mix there. And then when it comes to like annual recognition programs, it's totally dependent on what it is. We have some like $1 million and $500,000 recognition programs that everyone's able to do. But then for Q Club, as we call it, very, very creative. We just changed P with Q, but we do have some requirements on tenure just because it's an enormous event, and it's 6 months as well, I think, Dave. So yeah, totally up to your sales work.
Makes sense, but it's all about making an even playing field. No one wants to compete for a prize when the balance is off. That's certainly no fun.
If you demoralize your reps at the announcement of your incentive, it's gone. So
yeah, totally.
We did something really fun this year. So we had one rep who they both have been here over a year, but we had one rep who had a higher percentage of quota attainment, and we had another rep who had a higher dollar number, and their quotas were slightly different. And when we did our awards, we neglected to say who the number one rep was. And of course, there was a lot of like wanting to be the number one rep. And if I remember correctly, we might have even said on each of their slides, number one rep, on both of them. And then once we sent them awards that were basically, we had them custom made. They were like, the BFF hearts, they're like split in half, they're necklaces. We sent them each other's picture on the award so that and they opened it on camera, and it was amazing because they're like, and now announcing the number one rep, could you please open both your boxes? And they open their boxes and they're like, what? And so we used, those little nuances to help fuel the, okay, all right, I got to do even more next year because I can't have someone in on my territory of being number one rep. So it was super fun. They loved it. And now they have the picture of the other person in their award on their desk, pushing them every day. So yeah, it was a super fun and from what I understand, creative way of motivating them.
That's awesome. I like that example. All right, I want to sneak one more kind of rapid fire 2-part question in, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. And Hitler, I'm going to start with you. We've been talking a lot about kind of or interchangeably been using incentives versus rewards. In your eyes, what are the difference kind of between those two? What are you focused on? And then the second part is, do you believe more in individual performance rewards / incentives or team awards? And what have you found more effective?
Yeah, I think incentives are kind of almost like a pull, and rewards are like the push. And right now we're focused more on incentives because we want to keep people going. They're tired. They don't want to have any more meetings, things of that nature. So, with incentivizing them, we're doing just even little things. I mean, sales managers are limiting internal meetings and they're making them shorter whenever they can. Just little things like that. So they'll say, I know this was a half an hour call, but we just want to spend 15 minutes. Let's wrap it up as soon as possible and getting off the phone. I think as far as the individual performance versus team, we have always kind of looked at things as an individual performer. However, we've done a little more focus on the engineers that work with the salespeople within our division and setting up those teams for success and kind of recognizing how they go together, almost like the heart thing. They are one side to another. So I think it's still going to remain pretty much individual, but hopefully that answers your question.
It does. It does. And with three minutes left, Graham, would love to hear your opinion on incentives versus rewards, and then individual versus team.
Yeah. So a lot of this could just be nomenclature. I mean, how often do we hear spiff, competition, incentive, right? Like they're all saying the same thing in different ways. So the way that I've chosen to adopt my own nomenclature is I look at it in
trademarked Graham.
Yeah, right.
Miller,
so I think there's incentive and then there's recognition. So incentives are generally performance-based, metric-based. And to dive into the next question, you should be switching between individual and team competitions. There's so much benefit from a cultural standpoint of taking your teams together and just letting what naturally occur. It's the best, right? And so that's incentive. There's a carrot on the stick, go get it. Best team's going to go get it. This is great. And I should mention there's two prizes to every incentive. There's the literal prize, and there's the pride and the prestige. That is sales. I've had reps where we've had some issues with the reporting at the last minute and something changed and we announced someone wrong and we needed to reconcile it. And we said, hey, your prize is taken care of. And they said, I don't care. You need to, like, I'm number one. Say I'm number one. And I get it. Like, you work hard. We all want to be appreciated. There's nothing bad about that. So that's the incentive piece. The recognition piece, I think, has more to do with who we are as people and our consistency, our values, who we are, right? And so we try and take that holistic approach, at least I do in running my programs at Qualtrics, so that we're rewarding people for what they do, but who they are as people. And so that's sort of the two. Yeah, that's my take on it, at least.
I love it. And I want to launch one more poll. So let us know if you want to connect with the Blue Board team. As I mentioned, it is sponsored by Blue Board. If you are thinking about any of this stuff that we're talking about today, incentives, rewards, how to keep your sales team motivated, let us know if you want to talk to their team. I personally know them all. They're pretty awesome humans. So I would suggest doing it. David, take us home, man. What is your thought on individual versus team performance? Which should you weight more?
Yeah, I think of it kind of like a baseball team. Like, you have your MVPs, you have your star performers, but when we win as a team, everybody gets a ring, right? So we've been using these NASA analogies and talking about JFK when he toured and he asked the janitor, what's your job? And the janitor said, to get a man on the moon, because everyone's critical. So we acknowledge individual contributors with significant, top deal, number one seller or two number one sellers in the instance of last year. With things like that, that's how we acknowledge the individuals. But at the same time, our SEs get to go based on which region did the best, and the SEs support a number of reps. So it's usually the team of SEs. So it's I will say we're trying to dance the line of both while acknowledging and giving that prestige to those top performers and making sure that they feel recognized and appreciated for what they've really done. But with our trip, we try to make it as inclusive of an experience across the company as possible.
I love it. Well, that takes us to time. David, Hillary, Graham, thank you so much for hanging out with the Sales Hacker community. That was a lot of fun. Special thanks again to Blueboard and for all the great questions. Thank you all. That was a lot of fun. We'll see you next time.